Well, good morning again, and I'm so glad you chose to be with us. Before we get started, just a shout out to Olu. All right, people. Were you here last week? Come on. Oh, man, I leaned over when I was walking up, and I just looked him in his eyes. I was like, there's my friend, all right? Olu, thank you for last week. It was so fantastic. If you missed last week, well, you missed it because turned out we didn't get it recorded. So that's why you should be coming to church, people, all right? I am just grateful for the conversation we had last weekend. It was so perfect. And I want to move it into a start of a new series of teachings today called The Human Experience. What I want to do is I want to take a few sessions to kind of teach through what I am calling an exploration on how to be human, or an exploration or a guide on what it means to be human. Now, to get at this, let me just start with a quote. Which kind of spurred a little bit of the thinking behind these series of teachings, all right? And then I'm going to tell you a little bit about where we're going over the next month or so, and then that way you can decide which Sundays you want to come or not. Okay, so let me start with this quote. This is a quote. It won't be on the screens. It's by Alan Watts, all right? I'm a big Alan Watts, Ram Dass fan. Alan Watts said this. I love this. He said, "You are this fantastically complex thing, aren't we? And you're doing all of this, whatever this is, and you and I never had any education in how to do it. You are this fantastically complex thing, and you're doing all of this, and by this I mean the experience we are having as humans, and none of us had any education in how to do this." Or I would word it like this maybe. Here's a question. Have you been human before? Now, I know there might be one or two of you in here going, actually, let's talk about that. Because we are an ever-evolving spiritual collective, and so there are lots of people that come from lots of wisdom traditions, and some of you might argue, actually, in fact, this is my fourth time around, all right? Okay, I get it. My wife oftentimes watches Friends. That shows you our age, by the way. Been watching them for years. When we first got married, we couldn't afford electricity. We got electricity. We couldn't afford cable. You're like, this poor guy. We couldn't afford cable, and I remember, and we even tried, like, do you guys remember the antenna? Do you remember that? So I was like, we can't, like, we were freshly married, living in this 2-bedroom apartment, and I was like, we can't afford, this cable is out of control. And then my buddy was like, we just need an antenna. And so I will go up in the attic and had this big, huge antenna, and it never really worked. You know what I'm talking about? Like, it would pick up some stations. And so what we did was we were like, we don't need any of it. So we went, and every, special occasion, we would buy one more of the DVD series of Friends. You know what I'm talking about? And the thing about Friends is you just keep watching them over and over. So our first 2 years of marriage, I kid you not, when we would sit down on the couch, we would just plug in the DVDs and we would just watch Friends over and over and over again. And there's this moment on Friends that sticks out with me because, Joey's a character, and then Phoebe's a character. And Phoebe says something to Joey about the experience we're having as a human, and then she kind of puts her head on him and says, "Oh, no. This isn't, you haven't been around 9 times. This is your first time around. You're a baby boy, all right?" So anytime I hear someone that meets me and they're like, "I've had this experience before," well, let me just be very clear. This is my first time around, all right? Now, all of that said, have you been you before? That's the question. And to the best of our conscious knowledge, this is the first time you have been you. To the best of my conscious knowledge, this is the first time I have been me. To the best of my conscious knowledge, this is the first time we have been us. And to the best of our knowledge, this is the first time we've ever been together having this experience. And if that isn't confounding enough, we have arrived here and no one has given us a manual on how to be human. Which leads to some fundamental questions. How do we know how to be human? What does it mean to be human? What I want to do is I want to begin a series of teachings that explore this very idea. What does it mean to be human? Now, to get in detail, here's what I'd like to do. I want to talk about several ideas. First, I want to talk about our bodies, so like materiality. I want to talk about our bodies. Specifically, I want to talk about what we've been told is our hearts, or here's another word too that's real fuzzy. I want to talk about our souls. I want to talk about our spirits. I want to talk about our essence. Who are you? Who am I? Are we a body with a soul? Or are we a soul with a body? I want to talk about consciousness. What is it? How do you define it? And how do we know if we have it? Oh, I want to talk about time. Because you know time is an illusion, right? This experience we're having, we've put a calendar on it, but all of that's made up. So is there actually time? And are we inside of time, or is time inside of us? Oh yeah, people, we're going to get crazy, all right? I hear people talk about, I just want to spend quality time. Let me help you here. There's no such thing as quality time. Oh, I just want more quantity time. No such thing as that. We have to liberate ourselves from the idea that we are trapped inside of the space-time continuum, all right? We're going to get there. It's going to be great, all right? I want to talk about emotions. I want to spend a series of 3 or 4 teachings talking about emotions. All of them. Whatever it is you are feeling right now. Here's some questions I have. Are there good emotions and bad emotions? I meet people all the time. They're like, yeah, you don't want to be angry. That's a bad emotion. Is it? Because Jesus was angry a lot. In fact, one place Jesus came in, apparently he had a whip in his hand. That kind of sounds angry. Yeah, reminds me of my dad. I grew up in a household where they spanked. I'm just telling you, that's how I grew up. My dad had a leather belt. You did something wrong. You could hear his footsteps coming down the hallway. I'd be terrified as a child. And my dad would take his belt off. Yeah, Jesus walked into a whole temple. Apparently he had this little whip thing. I'm like, was he whipping the people or the animals? Yeah. Are there good and bad? And here's another question. Are emotions even reliable? Can we trust them? Yeah, because sometimes I've had emotions that aren't actually valid. It seems to be a bit of a perception. Yeah. Okay, we'll talk about emotions. I want to just keep going. I want to talk about complexity. I don't think we spend enough time giving nuance to the complexity of what it means to be human. The complexity of all of us individually. I love, and I mean that sarcastically, love the way we label people. Because our little brains cannot fathom the complexity of the human species. So, check it out. Republican, Democrats, that easy. Is it? Are you telling me that Yahweh created people that can be placed in 2 very simple categories? We're getting ready to vote. And every time I go to vote, they always have who I am. You know what I'm talking about? Independent, Republican, Democrat. I always get really mad. Don't you put me in a box. I'm a critical thinker, right? I love how it's just so black and white for us. And then you meet someone and you have to decide, will I put them in this category or this category, right? Newsflash, all of us transcend all the categories. I got news for you. You have contradictions a mile deep. So the next time you point fingers at other people's contradictions, just remember there are 5 pointing back at you. How we doing? We good? Okay. I want to talk about paradox. We got to talk about paradox because there are a lot of paradox. There are paradoxes I don't know, sorry, Emery. Oh, we have to because we're having this experience together. We need to talk about suffering and pain. So we're gonna spend a Sunday on that or 2. Here's a great question. Why is there even any evil in the world? That's like a fundamental, basic question. Let's talk about it. Why is there any pain, evil, suffering in the world? And then I want to talk about, if we're going to have this human experience, how do we do it together? So like how do we have a shared common good together? You know what word that's called? Politics. So right before the election, I want to talk about our shared common good together. Because if we're going to have this human experience, then maybe there's a way to do it where we can actually reach goodness. And then we can't talk about the human experience without talking about some sense of having meaning in your life or like purpose. And then we need to talk about energy. And of course, all that blends in with spirituality and materiality. So we're going to be here for about a year and 3 months, 4 months, all right? But I just have a few things that I want to talk about. Now, all of that said, before we get into the nuance of the human experience, we'll start that next week. Before we get there, it would be wrong for me not to start this conversation at the very beginning. So very, very simple today. Right now, it is 11:35. I want you to mark this down. I'm going to do my best. We're going to get out of here. It's going to be so great, and the kids' buildings are going to be shocked at how early we leave here, okay? Now, all of that said, hear me out. Very basic. I want to present to you one idea before we get into the nuance of the human experience that you're having and I'm having and we're having together. I want to go back to the very beginning, and I want to show you something at the start of the Old Testament. And then I'm going to fast forward, and then I want to show you where it's reaffirmed again at the start of the New Testament. All right? So we're going to go Old Testament, New Testament. I'm going to share a story in between, and then boom, I want to end with one quote. All right? So that's where we're going. Now, to start, let me just begin here. When you talk about the human experience, what we're having together, for thousands of years, people have been telling stories to make sense of our world, to make sense of this experience we're having together called humanity. And people tell stories not only to make sense of our world and our experience, but also to make sense of our place in that story. And so, we tell stories to others. Stories are told to us. And this isn't uncommon. I mean, by and large, everything that I'm experiencing right now is because I have trusted and believed the people that raised me, and the people that raised me had a particular narrative. And they handed me a story. Early on, one of the first things I ever learned is, you are a human. Oh, what does that mean? Now try to go back. Do you remember as a kid being so intrigued by the most bizarre things? You ever be intrigued? Like, did you ever have like existential moments, or perhaps I'm the only one, have existential moments as a kid going, what is all this? Most of us didn't, because we didn't overthink it. We just took the narrative for what it was. And somewhere along the way, people started just telling you things like, oh, there's a whole history here. It's called history. Read the history of the human civilization and how we got here. And depending on how you grew up, good Lord, you've got a particular worldview, and you've got a particular worldview, and so do you. And what's happening by and large right now in our nation, and what's happening within our collective, is there is some upheaval, and a part of that upheaval is we're starting to wake up and go, wait a minute, these stories we were handed aren't that accurate. Something's off here. Something isn't adding up here. Yeah. So there are lots of stories that have been told. Now, the Israelites were no different. Your entire Old Testament is about one particular group of people, a very small particular group of people. And this particular group of people had stories that had been passed down. And particularly when they found themselves exiled from their own home, their own community by the Babylonians, what took place is when they found themselves in a foreign land with foreign gods, their temple had been destroyed, their land had been occupied by military superpower. They all got together and realized, oh my God, we don't even know who we are. We don't have any essence, any identity. We've lost our home. We've lost our people. Our family's gone. Like, our God is gone. Like, who are we? Like, what is this experience we're having? And they get together, and a whole group of people decide, you know what? Orally, we've heard these stories from Grandpa, and then Grandpa's 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 Grandpa, and they trace it all the way back. And like we have these stories that have been passed down to us, but we should probably put them down so people can read them. And so they start writing and editing, and they create these stories. And so you have the first 5 books of the Bible that were edited, created, put together when these people are in Babylon, exiled from their own home. And what do? They start writing these stories going, okay, this is an etiological story. Etiological meaning I'm going to give you how we got here. So here we are, exiled by military superpower. How did we arrive here? Well, we need to go back a little bit. And so they go back to the kings. Well, we need to talk about David, and then we need to talk about Solomon, and, oh my God, Saul. We need to talk about, and so they start going back. And then they go back, and they're like, oh, and we even have these like primordial stories that are actually like incredibly metaphor, but just hang with me because they bring meaning and substance to our own existence, and they start going further back until they start compiling and editing these words that some argue now are just straight hymns. Some would say it's poetry. What we know is it's not like science. And so that's what I want to read to you. A group of people got together and they were like, we have to write how we got here. And when you talk about how you get here, you can't use literal language because it fails. And so this is what I want to read to you. At the very beginning, there is a story that is told. Now, there are 2 creation stories in the Bible. 2. One is in Genesis chapter 1, verses 1 through Genesis chapter 2, verse 4. The other is Genesis chapter 2, verse 4 through verse 25. I want to remind you that Genesis chapter 1 is not history, it's poetry. Now, most of you in here are like, yeah, we understand that. Some of you may not. And you can find yourself bashing your head against the wall going, I just don't understand. Where are the dinosaurs? All right? That is not at all what we're reading here. We have done a series on the Bible here numerous times, but it is worth repeating. We read the Bible literally, not literally. So read it in the context in which it is written. What I mean by that is you have all kinds of genres of writing. This is poetry. You get yourself in trouble when you confuse poetry with science fiction, or when you read science fiction as history. Can you imagine watching Back to the Future and going, oh no, that historically happened, literally? No, it makes you look ignorant. Do you know what I'm saying? That's not, you're misreading the genre. So, what happened in Genesis 1 is they go straight to poetry. Why? Because literalism isn't deep enough to talk about how we got here. Literalism isn't full enough. It isn't adequate enough. When you talk about things like creation or love, you know what you need? You need a poet. Don't bring me a scientist who tells me I can explain how you're in love. Snooze fest, all right? I don't care about the chemicals in my brain. No. You're not capturing the essence of love. You know who does capture the essence of love? Taylor Swift. You know what I'm talking about? Now, that's a girl who captures the essence of love, all right? And I just salute her this week, just to salute her, all right? Now, we'll just stop it there, all right? But she captures it. She is a poet. Apparently, she's a tortured poet, but she is a poet, all right? Guys, I got them all day. What else you want, all right? What else you want? What else you want? Now, some scholars argue that what happens in Genesis 1, so you think about the beginning, in the beginning God created, some scholars say it was a poem, but it was also sung like a doxology. So imagine them being in Babylon, and they're around a campfire, and they've lost everything, and some say they either sing it like a doxology, or they're chanting it. And what scholars say is the reason it's written the way it's written is because the 6 days represent 6 stanzas. So if you're like a musician here, you know there are 6 stanzas of the song. Yep. I grew up in church. We sang out of the hymn book, the Baptist hymnal. And a guy would get up and he'd wave his arm to lead music. And he would literally say, we're going to sing stanza 2, 4, and 6. And then sometimes they would start at 1 and I would look and realize there's 6. Oh my God, we're going to be here all day. Yeah. So if you look at Genesis 1 and you read it, one of the ways scholarship's like, of course it's a poem, because look at it. it has rhythm. Have you ever looked at it? Rhythm, it has cadence. It has like a flow to it. It's very much so a song. Like you can feel Kendrick Lamar through every lyric of Genesis 1. You know what I'm talking about? It's like boom, 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 boom. This got something. Then it repeats this phrase over and over and over again. Yes. Now, I don't want to read all of Genesis 1 to you because you've heard it 1,000 times and you're grad students in here. But what I want to do is go down to the very end, since we're humans, and I want to show you the part where like the human species comes into the poem, all right? And notice what the writers do here, okay? So this is Genesis 1, verse 26. Then God said, let us make humans in our image, according to our likeness. By the way, that word our there, just so we're clear, some people are like, oh, the Trinity. No. Quit trying to squeeze in modern inventions into the Bible. Trinity did not come along until the 3rd or 4th, 5th century. That's not what we're talking about here. This is an ancient text. When he says our image, that is the divine council. Monotheism wasn't around. That's somewhat of a new invention. Hear me. This is the divine council. There were gods, plural. Okay? And if that's too much for your head, you're really not going to like the Hebrew Bible. Okay? Then God said, let us make humans in our image, according to our likeness, and let them have dominion over the fish of the sea, and over the birds of the air, and over the cattle, and over the wild animals of the earth, and over every creeping thing that creeps on the earth. So God created humans in his image. In the image of God, he created them, male and female, he created them. And here it is, verse 31. Here's what I wanted you to see. God saw everything that he had made, and indeed, it was very good. There is a phrase repeated after each day in the creation story. Some say it's a refrain. Verse 10, verse 12, verse 18, verse 21, verse 25, verse 31. 6 times you have the poet going, and God saw it was good. I would just say, given of what just has transpired, being the creation of the cosmos, good feels like a bit of an understatement. Oh, and God created the cosmos. He's like, it's good. That's it. That's the crescendo. It's good. Makes you wonder, what else is there? Yeah. This word good is the Hebrew word tov, T-O-V, tov. Actually, in the Hebrew, tov is an explosive word. The Hebrew word tov does not mean merely good, and it doesn't mean merely pleasant. It actually means completely fulfilling the divine purpose for which it was created. So here's the image that the poet is giving us, all right? God creates, and at some point is inclined to stand back, observe, and look, and he's pleased at the essence and function of that which he has created. We are here, and we're having this experience, and when this experience began, the poet says that the divine that created this experience apparently creates it all, and then pulls back, observe, and says, it's tov. It's good. Now, I want to pause right here just so we can relate. Last week, Olu was up here. We had all of his artwork up here, all right? Olu is a sculptor, and he creates these sculptures, which are absolutely amazing. I am intrigued by what Olu does, but there is a point in Olu's work where he takes all of this stuff that we now know is not waste, all right? And he takes it and he creates these beautiful sculptures out of them. So last week we had sitting up on this table Adam and Eve and the garden experience made out of tractor, right? Like tractor. I'm like, that's John Deere stuff right here. Like, yes. Okay? At some point, Olu designs it. And my question to Olu was, and I love this, is there ever a point where you're dissatisfied in your creation? Have you ever made something and you're like, I need just a real vulnerable piece here for a minute. One of my favorite things to do And this is how I know the poets were on to something. And I bet you've had this experience too. One of my favorite things to do is to create stuff. All right? Now, I would imagine, and if I had time, I would do this. God, I would love to hear from you. What have you created in the last 2 to 3 months that you're absolutely buzzing about? I know you have something, right? Now, some of you are like, I haven't created nothing. I haven't done nothing. That's what you've created, nothing. Yes. We need more nothing in our we do. We need more nothing. Give me people who I'm like, how's your week been? I've done absolutely nothing. Yes, that's what we need. I didn't do anything yesterday. You hear me? I did nothing. And check this out. I have no guilt about it. Did nothing. Do you know what time I woke up yesterday? You know what time I woke up? Now, hang with me. If you have kids, you're going to hate me, okay? I went to bed late, hung out with some friends Friday night. I didn't set my alarm clock. I told Kate, I'm not setting the alarm. Put those blackout curtains, shut them. And I knew it was going to be raining. I didn't have anything on the schedule. Guys, I woke up because Katie was getting up in the room. And I was like, and I woke up, and I'm just going to be real transparent. I woke up and I was like, what are you doing? You woke me up. And she's like, I'm going to the store. And she's like, by the way, it's 11:30. I was a teenage boy. You're applauding, yes. And some of you are applauding going, somebody get sleep, please. I was like a teenage boy. Check this out, a teenage boy. And I woke up and I was just kind of like, wow, why are you making all the noise, right? So then I go downstairs and then my wife texts me and she's like, hey, I'm leaving the grocery store. She's like, I'm going to stop by and get some lunch. Do you want something? And I was like, you know what I want. Spicy Chick-fil-A chicken biscuit for breakfast at noon. You know what I'm talking about? So she swings it by and she comes in the house and I sit down at the kitchen and I eat this. God, it's glorious. I tell you about it all the time. It still hasn't changed for me. I eat it. I'm like, so good. I sit down on the couch and I cut on football for a second and I just start thinking about what I'm going to do today. And then I realize the day's halfway gone. And I look over at Katie. I literally have been up for approximately an hour and a half. And I was like, hey, I'm going to take a nap. I'm sorry, you're doing what? I'm going to take a nap. Walked my tail right back up, got in that bed, shut those curtains, slept for another 2 hours. When I got up from the nap, I was like, can we go run? Can we play? What can we do, right? So much energy bursting through my body, right? Yes. All I'm saying is all of you create. Yesterday, that was my Sabbath. I created nothing. You need a day where you create nothing. Honestly, you need that day where you do absolutely nothing, especially us, because we're in a progressive community in the heart of the Bible Belt. Check it out. We're playing a long game here. So I don't need you sprinting every day. Do you know what I'm saying? We need to do our pace, take our breaks, rest. The work of justice is the long moral arc. So we can't afford for some of you to be getting exhausted when we're only a quarter of the mile in this thing. You know what I'm talking about, right? So fight for your rest. Do nothing. Yes, me, I love to create things. It's what I do all week. You know what I did this week? Wrote 2 sermons. 2. I go up to my office. Katie knows I shut my door. No one bothers me. Cut my phone on the silent mode. And I go to work. And all I'm doing is I'm thinking about you. I'm like, I wonder what they're doing. And so I was like, I write talks. What are we? And so I'm just writing what I'm speaking to you. Not right now. This was written months ago. But I'm writing some for the future. And I'm like, okay. And so I wrote 2 sermons. Check it out. I write them, and then at some point I look at them, and I stand back and I go, yeah, that's good. That's good. I've had teachings where I'm like, Interestingly enough, the teachings that I thought were, I'll get done, and you are like, that's one of the things I've ever heard. And then the ones where I'm like, oh, this is going to be good. Y'all are like, it's okay. Yeah, it's what we do. At some point, Olu gets his design going, and at some point, he has to pull back, and he goes, it's good. It's good. I don't know if I've shared this with you. I'm in the process of writing a book, and I am so jacked up about this experience. We're in the editing phase right now, and the editing phase ends next Monday, so we're down to it. Well, they sent the script out to a bunch of psychologists at universities, which got me real nervous. I'm like, oh, my God, right? And I haven't got it back yet. They send it back tomorrow. Well, she sent me a note. She's like, you know what? Very minor shifts that we need to do. Great. Here's my problem with the script. It comes back to me, and the acquisitions editor has all these notes, and she's like pushing back on things, which is great. Great. We need that. But I told her, and the editor finally says to me, hey, I need you to understand something. You will always be able to add to the script. Because every time she sends it back, I send her back and I add another 5,000 words. It's like, I'm going to need you to stop now. It will never be exactly the way you want it. And I'm having a hard time with that going, no. Don't. We will not go public until it's exactly the way I want it. And she's like, then you will die with your manuscript. At some point, I am pulling back. I'm in the process right now, pulling back, and I'm looking at it going, it's good. It's good. Yes. That's what we do. This is the image that the poet is giving us. It's good. Have you ever created something, spoke it, thought it, and then it came into existence, and then you stepped back, observed, and you declared it was good? Stay-at-home mom, this works for you. Have you ever cleaned your house, and at some point you stop and you're like, oh yeah, it's good. Yeah. I have this little thing I do at our house. Katie loves it. First of all, Katie has trained me. I'm a well-trained dog, all right? And we talk about it all the time, but when we first got married, you got all these rough edges, and then you start becoming like each other. Do you know what I'm talking about? And she has subtly the things that I used to not like, I really like now, and I'm like, look at you doing your magic on me, right? Well, one of the things that she knows, I cannot go to bed at night if the countertops are dirty. I can't. It's a thing. It's just a thing with me. And so I go to Amazon and I order endless bottles of like that Myers. Your Myers? You gotta have Myers. You can't have anything else. It's just Myers. That Myers spray. And then I have like the pine smell because I want the kitchen to have like a little bit of like, you know what I mean? Like, so it's like Myers pine. And so I, like a lot of times I'll cook or Katie cook, we'll flip it back and forth. Either way, whenever it's done, she's like, oh, we're done for the day. And I'm like, we're not even close to done. All right? And I will get that spray out, and she knows every night, every single countertop from the kitchen table all the way through the kitchen, I will remove everything off those countertops and spray that thing down and literally look with the little light, be like, it's all clear. No fingerprints, no nothing. We can rest now, right? I will go to the stove. Stoves get dirty. Dirty grease everywhere. I'm like, what are we cooking? What are we doing? Just cleaning it all up, get it all. Because every good chef knows a part of the job of being a chef is you do not leave your kitchen dirty, right? Now, some of your moms are here going, can you move on with your point? We don't care about your clearly you don't have kids, all right? Double income, no kids. We all choose our path, all right? No one forced you to have those babies. I just want to throw that out there. Just a reminder. You weren't forced to. Okay. Yeah, at some point I say, and then I always sit down, and it's just the metaphor of what this writer is. I sit down on the couch, and I'm like, it's good. It's good. Yeah. What is it you've created? Some of you moms know what I'm talking about. You finally get the house the way you want it, and at some point you're like, it's good. Or maybe you say, it's as good as it's going to get. It's good. Yeah. That's the image here. Now, here's the point behind all of this. The reason there's a refrain, it's good, it's good, it's good, central to the human experience is a resounding affirmation of creation. This, it is good, is a declaration and affirmation of the essential goodness of the human experience. I am here to tell you this about the human experience. It's good to be here. It's good to be human. It's good to be you. It's good to be me. It's good to be us. It's good to be alive. It's good to be in Mableton, Georgia. It's good to be at Vinings Lake this morning. There is a dignity to being a human being. This experience we are having, called the human experience, at the very core of it, these poets remind us, before we ever get into the intricate details of this experience, do not forget it's good to be you. And it's good to be me. And it's good to be here. This is a bit of a new idea for me coming out of fundamentalism and evangelical world. Because a large part of my experience was not that it was good to be me, but a large part of my experience was actually it was really bad to be me, so I need to become something other than me. And a part of the narrative, the story that I was told, was not this one. It was a turn or a twist on this one. And a part of that narrative didn't start in Genesis 1. It started with Genesis 3, that you're inherently broken and flawed, and you're an evil person, and you need to be made good. Well, I just want to rewind it and say that's actually not where the poet starts. The poet starts in Genesis 1. It is good. It is good. It is good. He looks at the creation of the human species and reminds us it is very good. This is an affirmation of the essence of the goodness of this experience we are having. But when you start in Genesis 3, then it really does make sense that a lot of what I was told was what they believed. And because you are bad and you're inherently broken, you're inherently flawed, then what's the next available option? Then check it out. Then that means you are evil, you are wicked, this place is evil, this place is wicked. So the next best thing you can do is find someone who can make you good and then get out of here as fast as you can. And so I was taught escapism religion. That it was all about confessing Jesus as Lord so that when you die, you can go up and be with God at a place that is good. Well, that's the antithesis to everything this poet is saying. And so we would gather on Sunday mornings, and instead of singing the songs that Katie and Leah did today, we sang songs like, I'll fly away, oh glory. You remember this song? Somebody like, I still kind of like it, Cody. It's fine, fly away. Take your drugs and fly away. It's great. All I'm saying is if you ever look at the theology of that idea, the premise behind it is because you need to fly away because this world is broken and evil and sinful, and you're broken, bless you, evil and sinful and all. Yeah, and so you need to get up and get out of here. And Genesis 1 is the complete antithesis to that. Just so we're clear, Genesis 1, there is no there and then here. There is no I'll fly away out there. It's not in the beginning, God created it, it's awful, you'll fly away one day, hang on. No. In Genesis, there is not somewhere else. The soil, blood, dirt, trees, all materiality is not here, and then righteousness, holiness, and spirit, and somewhere else is there. No, what's so magical about this poem is that spirit and soil, spirit and blood, spirit and dirt, spirit and trees are all united in this one place. Materiality and spirituality come together in this poem. And so we cannot, nor should we ever want to escape our humanity as if it's some bad thing. No. I remind you, that central to the human experience is a resounding affirmation of the goodness of creation. That's Old Testament. Let me bring you right here to New Testament, and then we're done. Told y'all, quick and easy, all right? There's another story that reaffirms. So if Genesis 1 is the affirmation of creation and the human experience, it's almost like the human experience started happening, and then it started getting a little out of control. Pause. I never deny sin. Yeah, of course, it's a part of the story. Yep, it's what it means to be human. Yes. But sin is not the first word spoken about us. Goodness is. Sin might be the middle word spoken about us, but it's not the first and it won't be the last, all right? It's almost as if the thing derailed. My suspicion is that it derailed not because we are human, but because we forgot we are human. Okay? When we derail, it's not because of our human condition. When we derail, it is a betrayal of our human condition. And somewhere along the way, it got a little sideways. And so what happens in the narrative? You have, it is good, it is good, it is good, it is good. People living, having the experience going, I don't know if it's that good. I mean, you got Cain and Abel up here all the way down the line. You get to Judges. You guys ever read Judges? One day we should do a whole series and go verse by verse through Judges. Man, bloody mess. People killing people all the way through. Yep. You start going all the way through the Old Testament. And then it's almost like you get to the end of it, and it's like the divine looks down and the writers go, oh boy. They've forgotten. They have forgotten who they are. And so what happens to the narrative? Christmas happens. Well, what's the deal with Christmas? A baby is born. Well, what's the deal with this baby? In theology world, it's called the incarnation. You familiar with this word, incarnation? Incarnation. You know what a carne asada is? Come on now. Same root word here. Meat, flesh, right? What is it? I'm telling you, I think we overlook it. We just jump over it because we're like, oh yeah, Jesus was born. Woo, great. Wait. In all of the religions of the world, in all of them, this might be the most backwards idea. It's probably why I'm still subscribing. My mother tongue is Christianity, and I'm still addicted to it because I'm like it's so messed up. It's so messed up, it feels right to me. But apparently the divine, instead of being this transcendent being out here not involved, apparently this divine being decides to take on, incarnate, flesh and blood. And so the writer John, you know him? He's writing to a group of Jews who've been excommunicated by the Orthodox Jews. You guys know anything about that? You know what it's like to be excommunicated by your mother's church or your father's church? You know what it's like to be kicked out of a religious system because you don't abide by the rules and what the gatekeepers say is right and wrong? Anybody? Yeah, a couple of you. Yep, that's who John is writing to. You know what John does? John writes, because these people have found like some new, fresh movement of love that apparently Jesus is leading, but then the religious Orthodox people are like, we're not sure about this Jesus movement, this movement of love, because it seems to go against like our traditions. And so John's like, okay, so in 88, they excommunicate this crowd, and John starts to write to this crowd. And what does John write to the crowd? Here's what he does. What else would he do? He says, in the beginning was the Word. What does that sound like to you? Genesis 1, right? In the beginning, God created. In the beginning was the Word. What is John doing? John knows exactly what he's doing. He's writing to this group of people who have been excommunicated, and he's holding hands with Judaism, and he's saying, we're not deviating from this religious tradition that we've been handed. We're just evolving along with it. And what he says is, in the beginning was the Word was with God, and the Word was God. And you keep on reading, you get on down, and what does he say? Check this out. This is amazing. 1 John 1:14. And that Word, the Word, became, what's the word he uses? Flesh, and lived among us. Here it is. At the heart of the Jesus story is the affirmation of this experience we're having right now as humans. The birth of Christ is reaffirming the goodness of the human experience. The incarnation, carnal, divine becoming human. The divine meets us in the human experience. The divine and the human in the same place. And first they said, of course, the divine and the human comes together in the tabernacle, and then comes together in that tent, and then comes together in the temple. But this writer goes so far to say, no, the divine and the human come together in the body. The divine takes on flesh and blood, skin and bones, heart and soul. I don't know if we're really prepared for that type of humanity. Pete Enns wrote this. I love this. This will be on the screen. Just lean into this for a minute. This is the scandal of the incarnation. It is not that God became human in some generic sense, but that God enmeshed God's self with a particular human, with DNA passed down for generations, who picked up his parents' habits, good or bad, and thought about things like others of his time. Here's the question. How deep down does Jesus' humanity go? All the way down, if fully human means anything. Surely fully human, but Pastor, without sin, of course, though what that means and implies we can talk about at Books and Bonfire. But without sin, one thing is for sure, cannot be used to distance Jesus from his humanity. You see, I believe Jesus comes in his full humanity to lead us into our full humanity. Jesus was not an exception to humanity, but was a manifestation of what is deepest in every human being in every life form. It's as if the writers say it again and they keep saying it again. Creation at its very essence is affirmed as good. plants, trees, flowers, soil, wine, sex, all of it that we're experiencing, make no mistake, is good. Somewhere along the way, we forget this goodness, and Jesus comes into the narrative and says, how clear can I make it? The divine is within me. I am fully human and fully divine. And I don't know how to tell you this. You can say what you want with it, but Jesus was not the exception. It's also true for you. Yeah. And so it's a reaffirmation of our goodness. Now, I say all that to say this. How did God come? God came to us, to be clear. I want specifics. God came to us as a marginalized, homeless, outsider, refugee. God came to us as a Palestinian, Jewish, mixed-race baby, born in the midst of an empire, wrapped in bands of cloth and laid in a feeding trough. He never spoke English. He was not American. Apparently had long hair. He obviously was brown-skinned. He was unarmed, never picked up the sword or the AR-15. And he hung out with all the people they said you can't hang out with. Lepers and crooks and tax collectors and whores. Yes, that is your Savior. So somehow we've whitewashed this Jesus in America to be everything we want a good American to be. And make no mistake, the Jesus that you keep espousing, if he were here today, you would likely not like the path he's taking. So Jesus comes that way, and it's as if of all the ways God could have come. Isn't it interesting? God could have become incarnate through Elon Musk. He could. He could have. He's got nice cars. I like his cars. God could. And if he'd come that way, well, that would have been interesting, because then he would have been one of the wealthiest humans on the planet. I feel like God could have done a lot with wealth. And God laughs. As if he doesn't own all of it because he created all of it. There's a lot of ways that the divine could have come. And have you ever paused just to think? Why then? Why not come a little later when we have Twitter? You know what I mean? Like come during the social media age, because then we could have been like tweeting about it, like, oh, check it out. A Savior's here. It would have gone like viral a lot faster than the Bible did. No, of all the ways, this is the way. Is it any coincidence that we're at an election right now and we're arguing over lives of Palestinians? Do you find all of this fortuitous, that all of this happened, and yet this is the way the divine chose to come? To make his presence known? The stamp? Wow. So I hope you see it. It is kind of clear. So when you have someone who's mocking Haitian immigrants, I want to be very clear. I'm not trying to pull punches here. Just hear me. You do know you can't stand on that issue and then look at the way Jesus came and be like, yeah, got to get him out of here. Okay, well, just so we're clear, don't talk to me about getting God and kicking God out of schools when you're kicking him out of the country. Do you understand? You understand what I'm saying? Okay. Okay, so you're like, oh, he's just playing the hits right now. All right, okay. All I'm saying is this. This is the way that the divine came, and it's right in the midst of it, it's good to be Jesus. It's good to be a mixed race baby. It's good to be a Palestinian. It's good to be Jewish. It's good to be unarmed. It's good to be exactly the way Jesus was. Now, fast forward. It's not just exclusive to Jesus. It's true for us too, and we're done. Okay, here it is. I was born in Lake City, Florida. Some of you are like, never heard of it. I know. I lived in Jasper, Florida. Never heard of it, right? I then lived in Graceville, Florida. My dad went to seminary there. which of course you'd have a seminary in Graceville, Florida, all right? I then moved to Webb, Alabama. It's one of the most progressive cities in Alabama. I then moved to Blakely, Georgia. I then moved to Elizabethton, Tennessee. And then I moved to a town called Mableton, Georgia. I want to tell you something. It's good to be me. And I don't know where you're from, who your parents are, how you got here, what your story is, but whatever it is, this is just a reaffirmation before we get into the human experience. We start here. It's our starting point. It's good to be you. It's good to be you. It's good to be us. It's good to be human. Just end the sermon here by saying, stop apologizing for being you. You don't have to do that anymore. All the time, people come up to me crying. I'm so sorry for. You don't ever need to apologize. Or I'll run into people sometimes that are like, I'm sorry to interrupt. For speaking? Some people I know, it's like, almost, I'm sorry for existing. Pull your shoulders back just a little bit. I don't mean to get all Joel Osteen too much, but I'm just saying there is some stuff that he's teaching that I'm down with, right? Pull your shoulders back a little bit. Push your head up. Like, I want you to know you are also made in the image of God, and that your very essence, the divine, has declared good, and nothing's changed from that. So stop apologizing for existing. You don't have to apologize for interrupting during the meeting because your voice matters too. So what if you embraced your inherent goodness and you stopped apologizing for who you are? Yes, you were born where you were born. I was born where I was born. I have a Southern accent. I've worked hard to get it out. Every now and then it digs its way in. And I'm like, hell yeah. You know what I'm talking about? Like and I used to run from it. Now I embrace it. If you got a problem with my Southern accent, if you deem it as being uneducated, then I will show you my GPA from Emory and we can compare, okay? Now, besides that, I also want you to know that this is how my experience has been. And I'm not embarrassed of it, and I'm not ashamed of it. I embrace all of it. This is who I am, and I do not and will not apologize for it. Yeah. And so it is for you. So it is for you. So take that bit, and when you go to Thanksgiving this year and they start railing you, stand up at the table and go, this is who I am. Okay, one story, and I promise we're out. Katie and I have Katie's cousin has a friend. And Katie and I had this little line. Yeah, we had to share it. Yeah. Oh, we're going there. And this was not, I did not ask for ahead of time, but we're going to go there. It's great. I'll give the G version, but she has this friend. And Katie and I had this line that we run back and forth to each other. But she has this friend that basically, she one time went out to the beach, and she was wearing, this bikini or whatever out on the beach. And apparently she has this tattoo, and it's this kind of real awkward, provocative tattoo or whatever. And the cousin walked up to her and was like, oh, that's a lovely tattoo and a lovely place for a tattoo. And she says, she turns around, and she starts talking about the fact how everybody talks about her tattoo, and, you shouldn't have a tattoo, and da-da-da-da. And her exact words were, this is like a country girl from, South Carolina. She looked at her and said, yeah, it's my tattoo. I like it. It's who I am. So Katie and I have this running joke all the time. And every time we run into something somebody doesn't like us, I'm like, I like it. It's who I am, right? I'm giving you permission to use this, all right? When someone comes at you, just say, you know what? I like it. It's who I am. Listen to your music. Find your playlist. Find your group. Stop worrying about what's number one on the charts. We don't define all of that. What moves you? What pushes you forward? What inspires you? Yeah, that's who you are. That's a part of who you are. Get all of that. Don't be embarrassed of it. If you're here and you're like, but I want to be cool, but you love Luke Combs, listen to him. For God's sake, don't let anybody shame you for your music choice. Get in the car, pull out of the parking lot, and get your honky-tonk on. Do whatever it is you need to do. Don't be ashamed. If that moves you, let it move you. Do you is what I'm saying. And I know that can be so trivial and so shallow at some level, but all I'm saying is this. We don't have to be ashamed to be human. And I'm so tired of a culture that shames us with every move we make. I'm drop kicking that shame right out of here going, people, hear me well. Hear me well. It is good to be us. And it's good to be human, and it's good to have this experience. Now, let's just end it here. This is our benediction. One quote by John Philip Newell. It'll be on the screen. Listen to what he says. Oh, this is great. If goodness were extracted from the universe, all things would cease to exist. For goodness is not simply a feature of life. It is the very essence of life. I invite you to look to the deepest energies of our bodies and souls and to the deepest patterns and rhythms of the earth as a manifestation of the goodness of God. I invite you to see Christ as the one who speaks again this forgotten goodness, the word that comes to us from the beginning. It is an invitation this morning to listen for the sacred, not away from life, but deep within all that has life. Okay, Bindings Lake, we'll jump into the heart of this series next Sunday. Peace be with you. See you then.